The film opens with a house where food is left on the dining table and broken glass lies on the floor as if the family left suddenly after an argument. We then meet Maddie, who lives there. At 2 a.m., she wakes up. From the photos inside, we learn she has a daughter named Alice, but Alice isn't home. The fire alarm keeps beeping, and even after Maddie changes the battery, it won't stop. Just then, Alice calls. Upset, she says she left without telling anyone and even took her father's car. Moments later, Frank arrives and demands to know where Alice and his car are. Maddie says she doesn't know. Maddie texts Alice, asking her to call. Both parents are clearly worried, showing the family is under stress. Frank wants answers, so Maddie calls again. This time, Alice is panicked. She says she may have hit someone. Hearing this, Maddie and Frank are shocked. Maddie asks if anyone is hurt or if there's help nearby. Alice isn't in the city, which makes things even stranger. Maddie tells her to call an ambulance immediately. Alice replies that one is already on the way. Maddie, a former paramedic, asks Alice why she isn't still on the line with the ambulance operator. Nervous, Alice says she hung up. Maddie insists she must call again so they can guide her properly. But Alice just wants her mother to come help. She says the ambulance will arrive in about 20 minutes. When Maddie asks her location, Alice replies, Ashfolk Forest on Hallow Road. The place was 42 miles from their home, at least an hour's drive. Since Maddie was a professional, she guided Alice on what to do. But Alice was panicking and in tears. She finally said the injured person was a girl about her age. Still sitting in the car, Alice heard Maddie urging her to step out and help, or the girl might not survive. Following her mother's words, Alice got out and walked toward the unconscious girl. Most of the film takes place inside the car, and we only hear Alice's voice. Nothing is shown, forcing the audience to imagine what's happening, which creates strong suspense. Alice finally steps out, crying. She says no one is around, and the hurt girl lies on the road with open eyes, badly hurt. Frank tells Alice to listen to Maddie, reminding her this is her mother's expertise. Alice explains the girl suddenly appeared in front of her car. When Alice says the girl isn't breathing, Maddie instructs her to perform CPR, just as she was taught. Alice tries repeatedly, but the girl doesn't respond. Maddie insists she continue. Eventually, Alice breaks down. She wants to stop and sit in the car. Frank agrees, but Maddie pushes her to keep going. Following Maddie's words, Alice keeps pressing the girl's chest until the ribs break. The moment horrifies Alice and her parents. It seems the girl is gone. Frank accepts it, but Maddie argues this can happen during CPR and refuses to give up, while Alice has no strength left. Frank tells Alice to sit in the car and wait for the ambulance, but Maddie refuses, saying the girl might still be saved. The two parents begin to argue. Soon, they realize the girl isn't alive. Alice's call cuts off, and Frank keeps trying to reconnect. To calm himself, he says the ambulance must have arrived, but Maddie knows it should have been there already. Frank wonders what a girl would be doing alone in the forest so late at night. Maddie replies that the police will ask Alice the same question, what she was doing on such an empty road. Frank insists Alice is a good girl and they should focus on her future, but he is clearly in shock. The truth doesn't change. The girl Alice hit is gone. Later, Alice reconnects. Frank tries to defend her, while Maddie, upset, asks tough questions. Why the ambulance hasn't come, and what Alice was really doing there. Maddie knows these are the same questions the police will ask. Eventually, the truth spilled out. Alice hadn't taken the motorway because she had been under the influence of a bad substance after a fight with her parents. She was intoxicated when driving, and that made the accident far more serious. Alice also mentioned her boyfriend, Jakob, someone Maddie and Frank were already familiar with, though Frank never thought highly of him, though she hadn't told him anything about this night. Maddie asks Alice what time she reached Ashfolk Forest. Alice says around 10 p.m. She was tired, fell asleep there, and had nowhere else to go. Angry at her parents, she stayed, but later the place felt strange, and then the accident happened. Maddie doesn't believe her. She says the police won't believe it either. Clearly, Alice was under the influence. Maddie grows even angrier when she realizes Alice lied about calling an ambulance. Alice only wanted her parents to come and help. Maddie snaps, saying the ambulance could have saved the girl, but Alice let her die. Alice breaks down in tears. Realizing the situation is out of control, Maddie insists they must call the police. She believes her contacts there might help. Hearing this, Alice panics, afraid she'll be arrested. Frank also objects. He only wants to protect his daughter. But Maddie argues that Alice's biggest mistake was calling her mother instead of the ambulance, and because of that, an innocent life was lost. Maddie feels trapped, unsure what to do. Frank then says he'll take the blame. He tells Maddie to bring Alice home while he calls the police, claiming the girl suddenly appeared in front of his car and that he wasn't drinking. He believes they'll trust him, but Maddie knows the police will uncover the truth. Muting the call, Maddie warns Frank it's not a good idea. Even if Alice is saved legally, can she ever live a normal life? The guilt of this night will haunt her forever. Frank says if saving their daughter means doing nothing, then so be it. But he refuses to call the police. If anyone must do it, it has to be Maddie. The story reaches a point where both parents are trapped, torn between protecting their daughter and facing the truth. In such moments, parents feel they could go to any length. In the end, Maddie also doesn't call. Meanwhile, Alice keeps crying, seeing her parents as her only hope left. After 26 minutes, they reach Alice. She feels guilty and says she should tell Jakob, but Frank angrily stops her. He insists Jakob only used her and won't stand by her. Only her parents can protect her now. Frank tells Alice to forget him and focus on her future, her career, and the life still ahead of her. It's then revealed to the audience that Alice is pregnant. This was the real reason behind the earlier arguments, as her parents didn't want her to become a mother yet. It also seems Jakob may have already left her. A little later, the GPS shows they're on the wrong road, but Frank insists it's correct and keeps going, ignoring Maddie. Soon, they enter the forest road. One strange detail stands out. There are no other cars, no people, only them on this road. The reason behind this eerie emptiness is revealed at the end. Frank and Maddie argue again. Frank blames her, saying if she had cared more for their daughter, none of this would have happened. He accuses her of being distant for months, lost in her own world. Maddie realizes he has felt this way for a long time. Just then, Alice says she can see headlights nearby. Frank panics and tells her to turn off her car lights. It isn't them. Afraid someone might find the body, he orders Alice to drag it off the road and into the forest. Alice is terrified, but Frank yells that she must do it. Maddie is upset that Frank shows no concern for the girl, reminding him she too is someone's daughter. What if it were their own child? But Frank only cares about protecting Alice no matter what. Parents often think this way in desperate times. Suddenly, something breaks, and Alice screams. In shock, she says the girl's face is changing, turning into someone else. Maddie asks what she means, but Alice keeps insisting it's transforming. The audience is left wondering if something supernatural is happening, adding even more mystery to the story. Maddie thinks Alice is imagining things because she's under the influence. Soon, a car reaches her. A woman steps out and asks if Alice needs help. Frank tells Alice not to panic. The woman questions why she's on this road so late and asks if she knows its legend. She explains it's said to be a sacred place once home to fairies, though now only myths remain. She also notices Alice's car stuck in a ditch and offers to help with her husband. Alice refuses, saying her parents are coming. The woman's tone changes. She accuses Alice of being drunk and says maybe the police should be called. Hearing this, Frank and Maddie grow nervous. Maddie asks Alice to hand the phone to the woman. She explains Alice took a shortcut to university and her car got stuck, so they'll arrive soon and no help is needed. But the woman keeps asking questions, puzzled why they don't want help. Maddie says Alice is alone and wary of strangers. The woman seems to accept this and prepares to leave. Before going, she tells Alice to wipe the blood on her shirt. Alice claims it's from a cut on her hand. Maybe this was why the woman doubted her. But for the audience, it's still unclear. We only hear voices, never see what's truly happening. After the couple leaves, Frank and Maddie tell Alice to calm down. But soon she starts crying again, saying the two are in the forest and may have seen the body. Maddie insists they must involve the police before the strangers do, but Frank argues they might not have noticed anything. Maddie urges Alice to call the police, yet Alice refuses. She panics, saying the couple is returning. Frightened, she tries to drive away, but her car is stuck. The woman approaches, telling her to stop before sinking deeper. Alice doesn't listen and presses harder. Then the woman says they know about the body. Alice can't escape. Suddenly, glass shatters, Alice screams, and the call cuts off. Frank is shocked, while Maddie frantically tries to call back, but Alice doesn't answer. Frank feels helpless and speeds up, caring only about reaching Alice. He's driven by emotion, while Maddie stays logical, saying they must call the police. Frank snaps, shouting that they'll handle it themselves and she should stop pressuring Alice. Before Maddie can reply, Alice calls again. Maddie quickly answers. At first, it's silent. Then the woman speaks. She says Alice is fine, though they had to break the window to stop her car from sinking further. Alice is safe, but in shock from what she's done. Frank insists it was just an accident. The woman disagrees, saying it doesn't look like one. The body lies hidden in the forest. No police were called, and Alice only phoned her parents. That's foul play, she says. Maddie holds her ground, explaining Alice called her because she's a paramedic. Frank and Maddie explain they tried to save the girl, but failed. The woman shocks them, saying the girl was still alive when she and her husband reached her. Frank feels a moment of relief. Maybe things can still be fixed. But her questions grow sharper. She accuses them of acting out of emotion and ignoring the injured girl. Why hasn't the ambulance arrived? Was this intentional? Frank finally breaks. He insists it was an accident. Alice was upset after fighting with them and left home. And then this happened. He says none of it was her fault. She has her whole life ahead of her. Through tears, he admits he planned to take the blame so Alice could be free. It shows how far parents will go to protect their child, but raises the question, is that truly the right thing? The woman gives Alice the phone. Alice regrets not calling the ambulance sooner, since the girl is still alive. Frank comforts her, saying it isn't her fault, but Maddie insists she can still do the right thing by telling the police the truth. Frank objects, but Maddie warns Alice that if she stays silent, she'll regret it forever, just as she does. Maddie shares her past. Once she misdiagnosed a patient with chest pain as a panic attack, The woman later died of a pulmonary embolism. No one blamed Maddie, but she never forgave herself. That guilt drove her to resign, and it has haunted her since. Hearing this shocks Frank and Alice. Alice then says she's ready to take responsibility. She saw her own reflection in the injured girl's face, and if the girl survives, she wants to ask for forgiveness. This gives Maddie a sense of peace. Soon, they reach the crash site. Alice's car is there, but neither Alice nor the woman can be seen. The girl's body lies in front of the car. Confused, Maddie calls the police, saying their daughter had an accident and may have hurt someone. Meanwhile, Frank goes closer and freezes. The body is Alice. He rushes back to Maddie, shaken. She refuses to believe him and checks herself, only to see it's true. Alice appears lifeless. Maddie insists this can't be real. Alice had just been speaking to them, saying the girl's face was changing. Maybe it was all some kind of trick. But Frank, terrified, asks what she even means. It really is Alice. Both parents are in shock, unable to make sense of it. Maddie refuses to believe and dials Alice again. To their horror, Alice answers. Her voice is clear, even though her body lies before them. She says she feels strange, and the woman beside her promises help. When Maddie asks where they are, Alice replies they're still in the forest. Believing she must be nearby, Frank and Maddie rush into their car. Alice then asks the woman if the injured girl survived. The woman coldly says no. You left her behind on Hallow Road, and she didn't make it. The air turns tense. Truth and lies blur together, and nothing feels certain. The woman tells Alice it was all her doing, her own fault. Alice cries, asking where her parents are. The woman answers coldly, "From now on, we are your parents. Yours failed to make the right choice, so we will." She says they've always been here, guiding others before Alice too. Frank and Maddie hear everything, frozen in shock. Alice screams, begging to leave, but the woman says she cannot. Maddie and Frank search desperately through the forest, but cannot reach her. The woman tells them no matter how hard they try, they'll never get to Alice. Alice sobs, pleading to be released, as if trapped somewhere else entirely. Suddenly, police headlights appear. Maddie stops the car, while Frank shouts for them to move so he can get to Alice. Maddie begs the woman for another chance, but she replies it's too late. In tears, Alice confesses she is pregnant. The woman calmly says they will fix her child as well. Alice's final scream cuts through the line, and the call goes dead. Maddie and Frank keep trying to call, but this time the line never connects. For them, it feels like everything has stopped. The next morning, police arrive at the scene. One officer explains it looks like Alice's car veered into a ditch. Under the influence and trying to get help, she must have stepped out, only to be fatally injured. Later, her body was found deeper in the forest, while whoever was responsible had already escaped. The details strangely match what Alice herself had described. Another officer points out that her parents said something different on the phone, that Alice had hurt someone. His partner replies they were likely in shock. We then see Maddie and Frank, broken and silent, still trapped in grief. And so the question remains, what was the truth? Were Maddie and Frank simply too traumatized to accept Alice's death, hearing her voice only through the hallucinations of their guilt and denial? By the end, it becomes clear that Alice was already gone. The desperate phone calls were not real, but rather the haunting illusions of parents who couldn't let go. In their grief, reality itself twisted, hope turned into denial, and their love for their daughter became a painful delusion.